Okay, let me ask you something. Why did you take the stairs when the elevator was right there?
That's a good one.
No, really. Or think about this. Why does that hand-knitted scarf, the one that's a bit misshapen and maybe smells a little woolly, why does that feel so much warmer, so much more meaningful than the perfect machine-made one you bought last winter?
It is, when you think about it, the ultimate irrational choice, isn't it?
Totally irrational.
I mean, if we're supposed to be these energy conservation machines, organisms that are just hardwired to get the most reward for the least amount of work,
Right. Maximum return, minimum input.
then every single time we choose to do something difficult voluntarily, that should be a deterrent.
Yeah.
By any account of, classical rationality, effort is a cost. It's a negative.
And if we look at that fundamental equation they teach in Econ 101, value equals reward minus cost, then adding effort it should subtract from your satisfaction.
It should.
That difficult path should leave you feeling drained, maybe even ripped off, not satisfied. And yet, we see the opposite all the time. The harder the path, the sweeter the reward feels, the higher we value it.
And that's what we call the effort premium.
The effort premium.
It's the central paradox we're diving into today. Why hard-won outcomes are valued so disproportionately higher than easy ones. This deep dive is really a full philosophical and psychological reconstruction of how our minds and even our society manage to code difficulty into value.
So the big question is, why do we psychologically reward ourselves for intentionally spending energy we're supposed to be saving?
Exactly.
And we have just a massive stack of sources for this one. We've synthesized a huge body of research. I mean, this covers everything from evolutionary anthropology all the way to brain scans and neurocognitive studies.
Yeah, this isn't just about, a good feeling. This is about some very deep-seated psychological architecture.
Okay, so what's our mission for this deep dive? How are we going to tackle this?
Our mission is to give you a full 4-layered logical framework to really get your head around this paradox. We're going to synthesize 4 core theoretical domains:
Okay.
cognitive dissonance theory, neurocognitive modulation, evolutionary signaling, and motivational psychology.
Wow. Okay, so all of that together should explain how our minds basically evolved to trick themselves into keeping going when, the cold rational math says we should just quit.
That's the plan.
Let's do it.
So, to start, we really have to establish our philosophical anchor. This is the executive thesis that we've derived from synthesizing all of our source material. This is the bedrock for everything else we're going to discuss.
Okay, lay it on us.
The executive thesis. The disproportionate subjective value assigned to outcomes achieved through significant personal effort, the effort premium, is a robust, multi-layered adaptive mechanism maintained by internal cognitive dissonance resolution, neurocognitive reward amplification, and external social signaling of competence.
Whoa, wait. Okay, that is a truly wonderful academic mouthful.
I know.
But I guarantee you half our listeners just heard blah, blah, robust, multi-layered neurocognitive blah, blah. Can we please just put that into plain English right now? Or
Yeah.
we're going to lose people before we even start.
Fair point. Okay. In plain English, the thesis means this. We value hard work because our brains are built to make sure we don't regret doing hard things.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
It's basically a psychological defense mechanism. It uses a few tools.
Yeah.
Internal justification, so you convince yourself it was worth it. External bragging, so society rewards you for it. And an actual biological boost to the brain's reward circuits to keep you focused on those big, challenging, long-term goals.
That is so much better. A defense mechanism so we don't regret suffering.
Pretty much.
So what's the philosophical problem that this whole complicated mechanism is trying to solve? I mean, why do we even need it in the first place?
Well, that's the contextual note. The core challenge is that rational actor model itself. If you're a purely rational being, what classical hedonism and economics would call homo economicus.
The perfectly logical human.
Right. Then you would strictly define effort as a cost. It's pain, it's suffering, it's energy you'll never get back. And the goal is always to maximize utility. Value equals reward minus cost. End of story.
Okay, so give me an example.
All right, let's say you have 2 objectively identical outcomes. 2 university degrees from the exact same university, same program.
Okay.
But one required you to do intense, grueling labor night after night. The other, you kind of breeze through, minimal effort. The rational model dictates you should prefer the easy path. And, crucially, the difficult degree should give you lower net satisfaction because of all the costs you sank into it.
Right, because the cost side of the equation is huge for the hard degree.
Exactly.
But we know, just intuitively, that's not what happens. The person who struggled for that degree values it more. They hang it on the wall. They talk about it constantly.
We're less likely to regret the years of suffering. The high-effort outcome consistently creates higher subjective satisfaction.
It's not even close.
Precisely. So the philosophical dilemma is explaining why that cost term fails to subtract from the value. And the resolution, which is the foundation of the effort premium, is to stop defining effort as just a cost.
And start defining it as what?
As an intrinsic modulator of the reward signal that comes later. The effort you put in is what actually changes the way your brain registers the payoff.
So the suffering itself juices the reward.
It reinforces the very behavior that led to the effort in the first place, which is sustained persistence. It's a feedback loop.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's dig into that first pillar then, the internal psychological justification that happens after you've already done all the work. That brings us straight to cognitive dissonance theory, or CDT.
Yes. CDT is really the primary internal engine here. It's a classic theory, and it explains how we resolve these internal conflicts. When our behavior contradicts our beliefs, we feel this psychological discomfort, dissonance.
And we're motivated to get rid of that feeling.
Yeah. We're fundamentally motivated to reduce it. It's an unpleasant state. So we can walk through the logic of this, focusing on what's called effort justification.
Okay.
Imagine you've made a massive, costly investment. Let's stick with the university example. You've suffered for 2 years through a really difficult academic program.
Right. You have the diploma in hand.
You have the diploma, but you look at it and you look at the job market, and objectively, it hasn't really changed for you. And the knowledge you gained feels, I don't know, a bit underwhelming.
Oh, that's a horrible feeling. Because you have two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time.
What are they?
Well, I suffered greatly for this outcome, is one thought. And it's bumping right up against, this outcome is actually pretty mediocre.
Exactly. That's the dissonance.
Yeah.
And you have to resolve it. Now, you can't change the past. You can't undo the suffering. That effort is already spent.
It's a sunk cost.
It is.
Yeah.
So to resolve that agonizing inconsistency, you really only have one psychological option.
You have to change your belief about the outcome.
You have to alter your belief. You inflate the subjective value of the outcome to rationalize the suffering you went through.
So you start telling yourself, you know what? This diploma isn't mediocre. This is the single greatest achievement of my life, and the knowledge I gained is absolutely invaluable.
You have to. That's the core logic of effort justification. And this process serves a vital psychological function. It protects your integrity as an agent. It shifts what could feel like a disastrously wasteful investment into a psychologically successful one.
If we didn't do this, we'd just be paralyzed by regret all the time.
Constantly.
This immediately makes me think of that classic and maybe ethically a little dubious study from 1959, the Aronson and Mills fraternity hazing experiment.
Yes.
We don't need all the details of the methodology, but what was the key takeaway? I mean, how quickly did people just completely change their minds to justify the experience?
The key takeaway was just the raw power of that psychological adjustment. So participants had to go through an initiation to join a group discussion. Some had a high-effort one. It was very embarrassing. And some had a low-effort, mildly embarrassing one.
Okay.
And here's the critical part. The discussion they were finally allowed to join was intentionally designed to be mind-numbingly boring.
So the objective reward was really low.
Extremely low. And the results were crystal clear. The participants who had endured the high-effort, severe initiation evaluated that boring group far, far more positively than the low-effort group did.
They had to.
They had to invent value for the group. They had to see it as interesting and worthwhile to justify the intense embarrassment they had just endured. The change in their subjective attitude was basically instantaneous. It was necessary to protect their self-image.
So what if the group had actually been fascinating? If the objective reward was high, would the hazing have mattered as much?
Theoretically, no. If the reward had been objectively good enough on its own, the cognitive dissonance would have been minimal or maybe even non-existent. Ah, okay.
Effort justification is really at its strongest when the effort is high and the objective reward is either ambiguous or just plain low. That's when the brain has to step in and bridge that value gap.
Got it. So now that we understand this internal pressure to justify our past costs, let's look at how difficulty shapes our perception proactively, in the moment, and how the outside world actually uses difficulty to signal quality to us.
Right, so we're shifting now from that post hoc, after-the-fact justification to something called the effort heuristic.
A heuristic, so a mental shortcut.
Exactly. It's a cognitive shortcut where we automatically use the perceived difficulty of production, how much time was spent, how complex it seems, as a proxy for high quality or superior value, especially when we don't have clear, objective metrics to rely on.
This is why if I get two proposals, and one of them is this meticulous 200-page document, and the other is a crisp 20-page summary, my brain just automatically assumes the giant one required more effort and is therefore better.
Even if the core idea is identical. Yeah, even if the short one is actually more brilliant.
You are automatically activating that heuristic. It's an efficiency tool for the brain. I mean, we just don't have the time or the energy to thoroughly evaluate every single product or service we encounter. So we rely on these proxies, like how much effort seems to have gone into it.
And of course, businesses are all over this.
Oh, they leverage this aggressively.
So talk about that business application. The source material mentioned how, transparency and storytelling are now sort of essential to trigger this heuristic.
Absolutely. I mean, the modern consumer is very aware of mass production. So to justify a premium price for something, businesses have to show you the sweat equity involved. They need to pull back the curtain on their process.
They show their work.
They show their work. They highlight the dedication, the meticulous research, the rigorous staff training, the specific skill of the artisan. All of it is designed to activate the effort heuristic and boost the perceived value.
So the small batch coffee roaster isn't just selling coffee. They're selling the story of the farmer who handpicked the beans and the 18-hour slow roasting process and the expensive specialized equipment they use.
They are selling difficulty as a proxy for quality.
It's the story of the effort.
Precisely. When objective metrics are hard to measure on the spot, which is true for quality food or consulting or art, the signal of costly effort becomes the warranty. It's the promise of superior dedication.
And this leads us to one of the most relatable cognitive biases that comes from this. The IKEA effect.
Yeah.
And I will confess, I have a relationship with my IKEA furniture that swings wildly between immense pride and just sheer rage.
I think many of us do. And the IKEA effect is defined as placing a disproportionately high subjective value on products that you have partially or wholly created yourself.
My slightly wobbly Malm dresser.
The beauty of this bias is that it moves beyond just justifying the cost. It introduces two really powerful positive cognitions: psychological ownership and competence.
Okay, so it's not just, I suffered to build this, so it must be good.
It's more than that. It's the feeling of, I didn't just buy this object. I mastered the process of creating it. I am competent. You feel ownership over it in a way you never would for a pre-assembled piece.
So my pride in that wobbly dresser is actually this massive subjective valuation, and it's driven by my successful completion of the effort.
And successful completion is the key phrase there. The sources really emphasize this design implication. For the IKEA effect to work, the task has to feel conscious and significant. You have to feel the labor.
Right.
But the design must absolutely guarantee that you can successfully complete it.
Oh.
If the task is too difficult and you fail, that feeling of competence just vanishes. The effect is lost. You just feel angry and incompetent, and the furniture just remains a pile of low-value particle board.
So IKEA is basically a masterclass in calibrated difficulty. They're optimizing that effort to competence payoff. It's challenging enough that you feel like you accomplished something, but it's never so complex that the average person, throws the Allen key across the room and gives up entirely.
It's a perfectly balanced system.
Okay, so now we transition.
Yeah.
We've done the internal psychological accounting. Now let's look at the external, the evolutionary purpose. If my brain justifies the cost internally, how does the outside world, how does society reward that difficulty?
And this is where it gets really interesting.
This is costly signaling theory, or CST.
Yes. CST addresses a fundamental problem of communication in a competitive world: trustworthiness. If it costs me nothing to claim I'm strong or smart or committed,
Then everyone will claim it, and the claim becomes meaningless.
exactly. So reliable information about a signaler's fitness or their skill or their wealth, it has to be conveyed through signals that are difficult or expensive to fake. The cost, the difficulty itself, acts as a warranty of authenticity.
Difficulty is the non-negotiable friction that filters out the dishonest actors.
It's the filter. And we can look at what are called costly signals of quality, or what some anthropologists call embodied capital. This is information about your underlying strength, your cognitive traits, your health.
Okay, what's a classic example of that?
Well, think about the classic evolutionary example, the show-off hypothesis, which has been studied in many small-scale human
Right.
societies. Men will often pursue really difficult, high-risk hunting targets like large prey or dangerous animals, even when smaller, safer prey is actually more calorically efficient to hunt.
So it's not about getting the most food for the least work.
It's not just about the calories. The hunt is a public, undeniable signal of physical strength, of skill, and of the ability to organize a dangerous cooperative venture. It's a display.
And it's a reliable signal because it's prohibitively costly for someone who lacks those skills. They'd fail or get hurt. So it deters fakers. The reward isn't just the meat, it's the social currency.
It's the status. And we see this principle in maybe the most universal signal of quality today, wealth signaling.
Conspicuous consumption.
Right. The sources note this is about purchasing luxury goods that provide very little additional utility over much less costly versions.
The Rolex versus the Timex. They both tell time just fine.
Identically. But the Rolex signals wealth through its high verifiable acquisition cost. And it's not just signaling current wealth, but the ability to access and maintain those resources over time. The difficulty in acquiring that watch, the financial sacrifice, is what gives the signal its power.
Because everyone could just easily afford one, the signal would completely collapse.
The value would be gone. And the same principle applies to long-term academic or professional achievement. The intense difficulty, the years you invest, the rigor of peer review for advanced degrees or big publications.
It's all a costly signal.
It's a costly signal of high cognitive competence and conscientiousness. It is very hard to fake dedication over a 10-year period.
Okay, so let's apply this idea of difficult persistence to relationships, specifically courtship duration.
This is a fascinating one. It's the idea that the difficulty of the pursuit signals the value of the prize, or rather, the quality of the suitor.
So if a male engages in a very long, persistent courtship, that signals quality and commitment to the female. How?
Because persistent courtship involves substantial opportunity costs.
Right, he's giving up other opportunities.
He's foregoing other potential mating opportunities or career opportunities or just, time and energy. And theoretically, low quality or less committed males would suffer more from these opportunity costs. They have less to offer, so their time is better spent seeking an easier target. They're more likely to drop out sooner.
So the sheer difficulty of sticking with it acts as an honest filter.
It's a filter. It dramatically increases the reliability of the commitment signal for the partner who remains, which is especially relevant for females who are seeking long-term stability.
So difficulty isn't just a hurdle. It's actually a necessary screening tool in the social market.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to status as compensation. We mentioned earlier that the value of an Olympic gold medal makes zero rational sense economically.
None at all. If you calculate the lifetime earnings or the currency per hour of training, it's an abysmal economic choice for almost everyone who tries.
So what's the real compensation?
It's the immense global status signal of being the victor in a worldwide competition. Our brains naturally devote vast cognitive resources to tracking relative status because historically, status translates directly into access to resources, to mates, to cooperation.
And difficulty is the price of admission for that status.
It is the non-negotiable prerequisite. You have to go through the difficulty to generate a reliable, high-fidelity signal of competence. That signal of unique victory, that's the core compensation for the decades of extreme demands and sacrifices required, as the sources put it.
So the status is the effort premium, just externalized and validated by society.
Exactly.
That explains all the positive signals. But what about the inverted signal? The idea of costly signals of need, where sometimes the highest cost is used to signal genuine vulnerability to people you're already cooperating with.
Right. This flips the system on its head, but the underlying mechanism is identical. The signal has to be too costly to fake. Let's look at the evolutionary hypothesis for depression, specifically under what's called the bargaining model.
The bargaining model of depression.
Right. So when an individual faces some kind of social adversity, their fitness, their well-being, often depends on getting immediate support from their cooperative partners, their family, their friends. They need a reliable way to communicate that they are in severe need.
And how is depression costly in this model?
It's costly because of its profound effects, primarily the reduction of interest and investment in normal productive behavior. You stop working, you stop socializing. This cessation of normal activity is so costly to the individual that it would be prohibitively expensive to fake if you weren't truly in distress.
So the bargaining model suggests this shutdown in functioning is almost like a labor strike.
That's a perfect analogy.
You're signaling, I am so broken and unable to function that you must help me now. Or you risk losing all the future benefits of my cooperation.
It's a way to force cooperative partners to upregulate their support, to prevent the total loss of that person's future contributions. It's a costly, dramatic, and therefore reliable plea for help, and it leverages the deep social wiring we have for cooperation.
Wow.
And we see a similar, though maybe less profound, signal in crying, particularly adult crying.
Crying has costs.
Oh, absolutely. It has significant costs. Energetic expenditure, for one. There's potential reputation damage depending on the context. And physically, tears literally impede your vision and reduce your ability to respond to threats.
That vulnerability is the cost.
That's the cost. It's costly enough to deter fakers, and it reliably signals genuine distress in a way that is designed to elicit social support. And the studies on this are fascinating. They indicate that people report feeling better after crying only when social support is actually present.
So it's not just about emotional venting.
Its primary function seems to be communicative and relational. It's a tool for connection.
We've established the internal logic and the external function of all this, but now we have to move past the self-report, past the social dynamics. We need to know, is the effort premium just a good story we tell ourselves after the fact? Or does effort actually rewire the basic hardware of value in our brains?
That is the crucial question. And that takes us into neurocognitive modulation. The most recent research on this uses objective measures like brain activity to see how effort literally changes the brain's fundamental reward circuitry.
So we're moving beyond, I felt better about it.
To my brain registered a stronger reward signal.
Okay, so the main study we reviewed focused on something called the reward positivity, or RUP. For the listener, what is the RUP and why is it so important for measuring value implicitly?
So the RUP is an objective implicit neural response. You measure it with an EEG, and it correlates really well with the likelihood and the magnitude of receiving a gain. It's basically a key index of how the brain's reward system, that core feedback loop, responds to a positive outcome.
So if effort justification is a real biological thing,
It should amplify the signal. You should see a bigger RUP spike when a reward is received after high effort.
and the researchers weren't asking people, so how good do you feel about this win?
Not at all. They were just observing the brain's immediate unconscious reaction to getting the reward.
Okay, so how did they set it up?
The methodology was pretty straightforward. Participants did a simple number judgment task, and it was designed to be manipulated into either a low-effort condition, simple, consistent rules, or a high-effort condition.
And how did they make it high effort?
They used constant task switching. They had to keep changing the rule they were applying, which dramatically increases the cognitive load. And while they were doing this, they were getting small monetary rewards or losses, and the EEG was measuring the RUP that resulted.
Okay, so the moment of truth. What happened when they compared the high-effort group's brain activity to the low-effort groups?
Well, interestingly, the initial results were ambiguous.
Oh.
The objectively manipulated difference between the two groups, just making the task harder, did not lead to a statistically significant difference in the average RUP.
So just making the task objectively harder didn't automatically change the implicit reward signal for the whole group.
Not across the board, no.
That sounds like a failure of the hypothesis then.
It would be, except for the critical distinction between objective and subjective effort.
Okay.
The researchers then looked within the high-effort group, and they found a very clear link. The subjective experience of effort, how hard the participant reported feeling the task was, that positively correlated with a significantly larger RUP difference wave.
Okay, that is the core takeaway right there.
It's huge.
It's not just the external objective difficulty of the task. It's your internal perception of the suffering that drives the neurological reward amplification.
Absolutely, and the implication is profound. It means effort justification is not just some explicit, conscious attitude adjustment you make later. It's associated with a measurable, implicit change in how the brain actually codes value at a fundamental level.
The brain is actively and unconsciously inflating the reward signal to match the perceived cost, basically to protect the investment.
Yes, it's a real biological process.
So why do you think the objective manipulation failed, but the self-reportive effort the subjective part, succeeded. It seems like the context, or what the sources call contingency, matters more than just pure workload.
Contingency is everything here, the perceived link between your effort and the outcome. The author suggested that in the low-effort condition, the task was so easy that participants may have doubted the link between their simple behavior and the rewards they were getting. It felt random.
The effort felt disconnected from the reward.
Exactly. But conversely, the high-effort participants, having really struggled, were far more likely to perceive a robust, undeniable contingency.
I suffered for this, so this reward must be because of my suffering.
Right. The brain is hardwired to seek that causal link to justify spending its resources. The whole system is designed to create this tight feedback loop where hard work equals an enhanced payoff.
And I assume this brings us back to neurobiology, probably dopamine.
It does. It brings us back to the broader neurobiology. In biological models like optimal foraging theory, effort costs correspond directly to anticipated energy expenditure.
How much energy you think you're about to burn.
Yes, and the dopamine system is central to calculating that cost-benefit trade-off for any action we take. Maximizing our value requires maximizing the precision with which objective things like reward size or the effort and that map onto our subjective feeling of value.
And the effort premium is part of that system.
It's a critical part of that dopamine-fueled system. It optimizes the precision by ensuring that resource depletion, the effort, is matched by a subjectively amplified psychological benefit.
Okay, so difficulty is an internal reward amplifier, and it's an external signal of quality. But sometimes, difficulty can just be an end in itself. Which brings us to the optimal experience of internal reward. The state of flow.
Yes, flow. It's often called the optimal experience, and it really is the highest form of intrinsic reward. It arises when there is this perfect, precise balance between your perceived capability and the challenge of the demands you're facing.
And you need high motivation, too.
And high motivation. It's that sweet spot. Too easy, you get bored. Too hard, you get anxious. Flow is the feeling of being perfectly stretched, where the activity demands your complete attention.
What's the mechanism behind that? How does that work in the brain?
It's a fascinating matter of our cognitive capacity. The human mind can only attend to a finite amount of information at any one time. The sources cite a rough estimate of about 110 bits of information per second.
That's not a lot.
It's not. And flow happens when the cognitive load of the task you're doing occupies that capacity entirely.
So there's no room for anything else.
No room at all. This total absorption results in focused immersion, effortless attention, a merging of your action and your awareness, and a temporary loss of self-consciousness. Since there's no mental bandwidth left to worry about your problems or your regrets or your status, the experience is profoundly gratifying. It's intrinsically motivating.
So that sense of complete immersion encourages you to keep going, just because the state itself is so rewarding. It's almost the anti-effort justification. You don't need a justification after the fact, because the effort was its own immediate reward.
Perfectly put. And some individuals are just structurally more inclined to seek out this rewarding struggle. They possess what's called an autotelic personality.
Autotelic. That's from the Greek, right? Autos for self and telos for goal or end.
The activity is its own reward.
Exactly.
An autotelic personality is a disposition to actively seek out challenges and flow experiences. These are people who exhibit traits like intense curiosity, persistence when they face setbacks, and low egotism. They prefer situations that are high action, high skill, because the process is the prize.
And you can see the applications for this everywhere. I'm thinking of education, like the Montessori method.
A perfect example. It purposefully creates these self-correcting tasks that offer continuous, calibrated challenges. It's designed to maximize flow opportunities for students, especially compared to, traditional passive learning settings.
And in sports, of course, the experience is legendary.
Oh, it's called being in the zone. Formula One champion Ayrton Senna famously described a qualifying lap at Monaco.
I think I remember this quote.
He said he felt he was no longer driving the car consciously. I was driving it by a kind of instinct, only I was in a different dimension. It was like I was in a tunnel. That description just perfectly captures that effortless attention, that merging of skill and demand that defines flow. So difficulty, when it's mastered, can create the single most rewarding psychological state possible.
But, and this is a big but, the positive valuation of difficulty is critically dependent on that effort-outcome link holding up.
It is.
So we have to look at the crucial boundary condition, the failure state, where the effort premium just completely collapses. This is the effort-reward imbalance, or ERI.
Right, ERI is a model of chronic stress, and it comes from a sustained mismatch where high effort is met with low reward, whether that reward is material, social, or just self-reward. When the psychological system fails to justify the cost, the result isn't a premium, it's chronic stress and impairment.
And I think the most compelling source material here was the study that applied this ERI model not to the traditional workplace, but to a population whose labor is often completely invisible and totally undervalued, domestic work.
That's the key context. The research looked at a huge sample of German mothers, and it measured their effort in unpaid household and family work, and it measured that against their reward.
And what counted as reward in this case?
It was a combination of things: the intrinsic value they felt, the esteem they got from society, and the recognition they got from their partners or their children.
Okay, so what did they find?
The findings were very clear. Both high effort on its own and low reward on its own significantly increased the risk of poor health outcomes. But the most significant pathology, the biggest problem, arose from the synergy between ERI and a psychological trait called overcommitment.
Overcommitment. So that's like an inability to just withdraw from the high effort, even when the rewards clearly aren't there.
You just keep pushing no matter what. And when mothers reported high extrinsic ERI, so high effort, low external reward, and high overcommitment, they faced the highest risk of poor health by far.
How high?
The statistical synergy for anxiety was massive. They were nearly 18 times more likely to report high anxiety scores than mothers who didn't experience that chronic imbalance.
18 times.
Nearly 18 times. 17.59 was the odds ratio.
Wow. That's an undeniable catastrophic collapse of the system.
Yeah.
The brain is just not built to sustain meaningless suffering indefinitely.
It clearly demonstrates the limits of effort justification. The system is designed to amplify an existing reward, but if the objective rewards, like social validation, self-worth, appreciation, if they're just non-existent, that amplification system fails, and the result is profound psychological and physical impairment. Difficulty without a discernible purpose leads to pathology.
Okay. So we've synthesized the four pillars.
Yep.
The internal justification of CDT, the external signaling of CST, the neurocognitive amplification we see in the RUP, and the motivational imperative of flow, which is bounded by the pathology of ERI.
That's the framework.
But if you had to distill this entire theory down to its core adaptive function, the reason we are built this way, what is the most difficult, the densest paragraph in the source material to really, truly grasp?
I will read the concluding sentence from the synthesis source we used. This is the density we have to unpack.
Okay, let's hear it.
The high value assigned to the hard-won outcome is, therefore, a core feature of motivational architecture, optimized to promote and protect sustained, goal-directed persistence across challenging and rewarding endeavors.
Okay, that is the summation. It's dense, it's academic, and it's absolutely critical. Let me try to intercept that because it sounds like the system is almost working backward. It's not about the reward, it's about protecting the persistence.
That is exactly it. When we break that down into plain English, it means that the human psychological and neurological system is fundamentally built to reward the spending of our resources. Because we have to pursue complex long-term goals that require sustained, massive effort. Things like raising a child, or building complex social structures, or achieving mastery in a field. These things happen over decades, and the outcomes are often uncertain or ambiguous at the start.
These are all investments that carry immense psychological and temporal risk.
Huge risk. And if the brain calculated utility purely rationally and, realized after 3 years this effort was 70% wasted, the immediate rational response would be to disengage completely. You'd conclude that hard work is stupid.
And we'd never achieve anything difficult as a species.
The effort premium is the evolutionary safeguard against that paralysis. By guaranteeing that the reward feels subjectively better than it objectively should be, by amplifying that pleasure signal, it protects your large psychological investment. It prevents you from feeling regret, and it ensures that you're motivated to take on the next challenging goal.
So it promotes persistence by juicing the feeling of success.
Which then reinforces the complex, goal-directed behavior that society and evolution demand from us. It's like the psychological equivalent of an emotional interest rate. It pays this massive subjective dividend on your hard work just to keep you invested in the future.
Let's use that marathon analogy again, but really break it down. It feels like the perfect illustration of this safeguard in action.
Okay, think about the marathon runner. Say you're at mile 20.
The
The wall. The objective value calculation at that moment is terrifying. You're in immense physical pain, there's a real risk of injury, and the objective reward at the end is what? A cheap medal and a banana.
Rationally, the utility is overwhelmingly negative. Your mind should be screaming at you to quit immediately.
And yet, the vast majority of them persist. Why?
Because of what happens at the finish line.
The second they cross that finish line, the physical suffering is instantly and almost completely overridden by the amplified subjective reward. That thin piece of metal, objectively worthless, becomes astronomically valuable in that moment.
The brain immediately performs that effort justification.
Instantly. It turns all that suffering into a proud, necessary prerequisite for this amplified subjective reward.
And that amplified reward, that feeling of pure pride and triumph, then serves to motivate them to sign up for the next difficult challenge. It completes the motivational cycle.
They would never sign up again if they only valued that medal at its objective, $5 utility.
That's the core feature of motivational architecture in action.
It is a mechanism built to promote persistence by making resource expenditure psychologically worthwhile.
So this deep dive has shown us that the value we place on hard work is fall. It's far from just being sentimental. It's a deeply adaptive, incredibly sophisticated mechanism that's been engineered to keep us striving.
It really is.
We covered the internal mechanism of justification with cognitive dissonance, the external validation through costly signaling, the implicit neurological amplification that we can see in the RUP, and that critical failure boundary of the effort-reward imbalance.
We've learned that difficulty is often that non-negotiable friction. It's required to generate reliable signals that tell society you're competent, or that just tell your own mind that your investment was, in fact, worth it.
And we also explored the ultimate reward, flow, where difficulty meets skill, providing this intrinsic reward that's totally independent of the external outcome.
And this brings us to a final provocative thought to wrap up this deep dive.
The tragedy of the myth of Sisyphus, pushing the boulder up the hill forever, it's the pursuit of pointless effort. It's difficulty without any possibility of an adaptive reward or outcome.
Right.
But the sources suggest that true fulfillment, or what you might call unconditional self-worth, isn't based exclusively on the external outcome or the status. It's based on the dedication and the continuous effort that you invest in the pursuit itself, this intrinsic striving. It transcends the immediate pleasure of the outcome. So, as you're listening, ask yourself this. Where is your effort currently being justified by an external reward or by high social status? And, maybe more importantly, where is your effort creating an intrinsic reward for you through optimal challenge and flow? Are you working on something that's so difficult that the inherent mastery is the true prize?
And finally, a crucial question. Are you currently running into an effort-reward imbalance in any area of your life? Personal, professional, domestic. Recognizing where that psychological system is failing, where your high effort is being met with low or even non-existent reward, that's the crucial first step toward reclaiming your persistence for a challenge that is truly worth the cost. Because the system is built to reward you, provided the objective conditions for that amplification are there. Until next time, keep digging.